Hi, my name is Jacquie St. Antoine, and I'm from the United States. I came here with some of my colleagues. Thank you to Raisa for having us, and all of you for being here. Before I get started, I have to thank Rebecca for the opportunity to be here. And my entry to EcoJustice came maybe in a non-typical way. So by trade, I'm a special educator. I work in a K-12 setting, so I have students around 12 to 15. But I also identify as having a psychiatric disability, which is the focus of my presentation today. And so I took a course with Rebecca, and I was interested in EcoJustice because I'm a gardener and a hiker, but I hadn't necessarily thought about it. I'd thought about it in some ways, but not in others. In reading Rebecca's piece, Letting Our Hearts Break, was my aha moment. And Rebecca doesn't know this, but she's a mad person too. Maybe I do. Maybe you do. I'm telling you. And so that was my moment of kind of coming to that realization. And I'm very fortunate because aside from Becca, I have another incredible mentor and dear friend in my life named Phil Smith, who is just this brilliant poet and philosopher, and was really the reason I pursued a doctoral program. So before I kind of start my autoethnographic performance piece, which is what I'm going to share today, I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction to some of the things I'm going to talk about, because I realize they're not familiar to everyone necessarily in this venue. So give me a few minutes here to kind of introduce before I jump into the performative. So madness has existed throughout human history, and for some, madness has meant forced treatment and institutionalization, and for others, it's been coming to believe oneself is dangerous. For me, my madness has meant many different things over the course of my life. For me, my madness didn't begin, but rather is. And so individual experiences of what many would call psychiatric illness, but for which I prefer the term madness, vary. So I refer to myself as mad, not at you, hopefully, yet, maybe, as do others within the MAD movement. So this is a movement, it started in Canada, to reclaim the term mad, kind of in the way queer has been reclaimed in the United States, and other places I'm sure too, as a reclaiming of the term and a rejection of the clinical labels that pathologize my body-mind. So like disability studies, MAD studies holds madness as a social construct, and MAD studies rejects, as Nocella writes in an EcoCrypt book, as a fetishization of sameness and individualism. So my labels include depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, generalized anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and social anxiety. And it's situated in a lot of dread, and a lot of guilt, and a lot of irrationality, compulsion, anxiety, and isolation. And it feels like water, and I often compare it to waves, because like the tide, even when it's obscured from my sight, it still exists. It enters unexpectedly as intrusive thoughts, and it keeps me awake at night, and leads to sleepwalking and night terrors, and it distorts my relationships with food and fitness, and it often leaves me very convinced that I failed and that other people are angry with me or disappointed in me. And I avoid a lot of social situations, and I spend a lot of time leading up to them in a lot of dread. As Risa said, I looked very comfortable at the meditation retreat in the silence. And I was like, yeah, if I could live that way all the time, that would be excellent. At worst, it feels like drowning. But in many ways, everything I've just said is completely inaccurate, because it promotes this false binary, which I feel can't accurately portray my madness. There's no clear line between what is me, what is Jacquie, and what is my madness. It's me, I'm it. Lisa Lockford writes, each autoethnography is more than one person's story. And this autoethnography is my story, and it's greater than the singularity of my experiences. Living as a mad person means exclusions and othering that is not able to be measured statistically or even by anyone that exists outside of my body-mind. My experience of madness leads some to consider me an unreliable source. And ontologically and epistemologically, madness doesn't fit with our cultural values of rationality and credibility, and I'm far from objective. Madness causes me to be, as Harris writes, systematically violated, ignored, and erased in and from the record. And it's precisely this exclusion and othering which requires an autoethnographic turn. And so I see autoethnography as an antidote to this erasure. It allows me to bring the personal into the academic with the intent of, as Diversity and Morai will write, intent of disrupting, decentralizing representations and interpretations of lived experience. My madness is an individual experience, but it's one that illuminates the, as Iago writes, emotional, relational, biological, cultural, and historical forces shaping my experiences. These forces are entangled with my experiences and for me can only be examined through my own cloudy lens. To study my madness with any sort of distance is an impossibility. And while to some I'm an unreliable source, my madness drives every word I write, every step I take, every letter that leaves my lips because it's me. So being of an unsound and irrational mind, this autoethnography is not linear, it's muddled, and it's murky. To examine madness ethnographically, to me, would be to continue the othering that has plagued not only my life, but the lives of my fellow mad wanderers. It would be a continuation of the powers that have sought to eliminate me, or at least the parts of me that are viewed as undesirable. So autoethnography has become my shield and my sword. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 6 has always been my number, the one I resort to when things become overwhelming. Say the numbers fast, faster, faster, and maybe it'll all be okay. Sometimes I only make it to 2 because counting to 6 takes too long. Lately I make a lot of only making it to 2. And so I count the number of days that have passed since the incident. My feet go numb because I crouch on the floor while I count, and I flick the lines on my inner wrist where there's black ink now. It wasn't there before, but it always will be now. The incident, technically speaking, was assault and battery. But that isn't important. The incident wasn't the incident. It isn't the story. The before is the story, and so is the after. After. In the after, I don't leave bed. I'm paralyzed and surrounded by imagined white moths, and when you touch them, dust is left on your fingertips. Calls for mama, and I can't be mama now. I can't even breathe. The idea of driving my car, of eating or work is all very overwhelming, and my body aches, and sometimes it still does when I think about it. The angled bone on my cheek under my left eye. There's a spot between my spine and my left shoulder blade. And the mail comes, a letter for the victim. As a victim, you're given rights, none of which actually exist. My safety, my security, the job I love are all bargaining units to lawyers. And I feel invisible, I feel cheated, I feel used, and I'm the victim, but I keep being victimized. I'm pretty sure I was a victim in the before. A victim of pharmaceutical companies and patriarchy and student loans and capitalism and a human-centric worldview and objectification. It's only assault when they decide it's assault. So you relive it again and use your pain to make deals behind closed doors. Your assault is our gain. Face aches and neck pain. The doctor says, my neck is fine. She's worried about my feelings. But I'm pretty sure my neck really does hurt. So I exist on wine and Prozac, which sounds like a really bad grunge song, maybe like 90s. Wine and Prozac. 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, before. To be fair, the before wasn't that much different from the after. In the after and in the before, my classroom has felt like home. It's warm. From the outside, it's a storage box for butterflies that are beautiful and delicate, captured in a killing jar, because this is what we do to butterflies. We pierced their wings, and so we ended up here, damaged by strangers who carry lists and who talk and talk and talk. And I go under, lots of counting, closet organizing, laying on the bathroom floor. It feels deep underwater, fracturing like veins on a dried leaf. And I imagine myself as a taxidermied human. Those who do not think like we do are not normal, and those who are not normal do not count as people. Sometimes I've wondered, do I exist? Are the people around me copies of people, and so I don't eat, and I don't sleep, and I dream of dead bodies falling out of the ceiling and into my bed, and of years going by and trees growing through my walls while my body decomposes in my bed. And I wake in the other, and I'm afraid I'm stuck there in some other plane, and so I run to cheap drinks and loud music that you can feel in your chest. But let's go back to the before. There were red pill bottles near the kitchen sink, and it was in the before that they told me everyone didn't think about reality not being real, and sleep as a portal to a carbon copy of your life, and staying awake because maybe when you sleep you're dead, memorizing the number of steps in different staircases, deep terror at the animals you see on the side of the road, and the panic sheep feel when they're being sheared. What's in frosting and why you can't see stars from the city. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, after. I think about cutting in the after, and I never did in the before. A voice whispers, you don't deserve to eat, and soon I don't feel hungry anymore. But I'm unable to get the cutting out of my mind, and so I picture making these small incisions and watching the moment blood spills out. But it isn't rooted in wanting to die, it's rooted in wanting to feel alive. But I never do it because I'm afraid. And so I go to a small tattoo parlor for hours because tattoos are an alternative for me to cutting. And I didn't realize that until recently. And so each serves as a roadmap of my pain. My first is a Steve Prefontaine quote on my ribs. And it was from when I was contemplating my future and feeling absolutely terrified. Then I have a melting bird on my ribs. It's from when I was fixated on something and I kept organizing my closet, and that tattoo took quite a while. And then I have a large floral garden underneath that was from a time I was afraid to drive and I couldn't bring myself to leave my car at Target, and that took hours. And the words on my hip were from when I was constantly worried about one of my students, and so I did that in a friend in Miami, and I paid way too much money for it. And there's song lyrics up my spine from when I laid on the bathroom floor and repeated cold, hard, cool, over and over again. The dog on my back is from a loss from which I'm still unable to speak, and that took hours too. And the last one is on my wrist, and I've had it gone over twice. As a reminder that all of this is the after, and it's unescapable, and I'm here. Sleeplessness, large creatures slithering in through the windows and the walls, and spiny spider legs and blinding white light, and the sensation of falling headfirst into sleek gray concrete. Cold, empty panic, and grasping at that feeling between awake and asleep, I wonder, is the after over yet? I don't want to walk into traffic, it's the opposite. The after feels like maybe I was never really alive. And there is no end to the air and no beginning to me. The air and I are one, and I am nothing more than space dust, and if I think long enough about my body dissolving into soil and my flesh falling off my bones, it might happen in an unexpected flash, and I'll cease to exist. And I wonder if this is how Chris felt. Chris was part of the before, and he had dark eyes, and darker hair, and he tore about his shoes when he was angry, and he kept away our teachers and our other friends, and he was always in the office, and he was always in the hallway, because Chris's aren't allowed in classrooms, out. Chris's aren't students, out. Chris's aren't people, out. But it came at a price, because everything does, and the pill that he paid was his name. That kid, his new name, infamous in a shitty town with one stoplight, where they hang animal corpses from their walls and they call it art. And Chris saw himself in me, and I saw myself in him. And even though we existed in different worlds, much of the time we were bound by this unspoken connection. And Chris walked in front of a truck because he was tired of being that kid. And when he walked in front of the truck when we were 15, I was terrified that one day I would too, and I still am. But Chris was part of the before, where I can't exist again. And so time moves alternatingly fast and slow. Falling asleep is slow, teaching is fast. It's easier. There's fellow wanderers, and we talk about dragons and sandwiches and superheroes and what fog is made out of and why spiders are scary, and there's laughter. And when somebody is angry, they yell and they throw a chair, and I find a comfort in existing in a place this up front. Comfort in the idiosyncratic quirks. And we're immersed in each other and less tolerant of those unwilling to abide by our codes. And so 3 days into the after, I tell the doctor I think I failed. And you're too upset to teach, she says. My chest tightens because my classroom, my temple, my cocoon is the only place I'm not falling apart. They think I'm crazy. So I get more tattoos instead of cutting, and I drink tea, and I draw pictures, and I listen to songs about Polly, and then I sit around and feel like I failed some more, and I'm sure there are dead animals under my bed, and so I get a beer with a friend who gets it, and then I worry about my mom dying and never seeing my students again. They killed Kurt Cobain for this kind of shit, you know. And if we do this to our heroes and our icons, what do they do to that kid down the hall? What do they do to you? What do they do to me? In classrooms, in living rooms, in medical buildings, in offices, we commit these crimes daily, hourly, and implements measure cracks and faults and identify the problem, identify the solution, identify the person. We mark boxes, check, check, check. And they tell me I need to be cleared. Don't we all? So a week later, an hour drive to an office where a doctor sits behind a desk and I put on a show and I get cleared. And I stumble through questions that really aren't his business. And I don't talk about the animals in the walls or my fears that trees scream when they're being cut down. So you're nothing special except for some OCD and anxiety and depression. It's the same story: lazy, depressed, obsessive compulsive, anxiety, antisocial, neurotic, crazy, mad. It's a new diagnosis, a new label, a new pill. They can fix this. They have a pill for that. Fix me. But it never does. Things move upward. Sunlight, sunset might be right, or light. Up is in the depths of the ocean, and that's how it looks in my head, underwater, moving to surface. And it's in the after that I stop believing I'm broken glass. And I don't need to be glued back together into a wine bottle or a stained glass window or a cat figurine. And I decide to treat myself with the gentleness that I treat my students. And I don't put the glass back into what somebody else thinks it should be. I let the pieces be broken, the mosaic. The after doesn't look like the before, and maybe it wasn't meant to. I won't believe that my womanhood or my madness makes me less human. I won't believe that of the rock people or the tree people or the orca people either. I'm not broken, and I don't need a pill to be fixed. I need fresh air and wood paths and squirrels eating acorns. And I need to hold my daughter against my chest and blow bubbles in the grass and scratch the white fur under my cat's chin. And I need to talk about the things that keep me up at night and read books about people who feel crazy and grow potatoes and visit Mars. And I need to be around other human people who think the chicken Alfredo is a good nickname and space is amazing and terrifying, and who always button their shirt wrong the first time. And I need to listen for the water people and the star people and only be around other human people that listen to the tree people. And I need to feed the bird people and walk among the forest people. So I'm done with labels, and I'm more than a diagnosis, and I'm no longer a consumer. I'm more than a problem to be fixed, and I'm not a survivor, but I survived. I'm mad and I'm pissed off, and you should be too, that we're supposed to wear suit jackets and take pills, and that our sadness is too sad and thus pathologized. And we're supposed to remain unconcerned with the hydrogen people, and the soil people, and the mountain people. And we're supposed to keep our scars hidden with hierarchized ontological and epistemological labels that make us think we are the masters of this place. It's time to feel our despair and refuse to allow our despair to be pathologized. It's time to feel that despair because it means deep love. So I am one with the star people, and the bird people, and the tree people, and so are you. Thank you.